And yeah, many of the slides are made by Adam Braccia, but unfortunately he is sick. Feel better, Adam.
We miss you, Adam. Just the space bar. Okay. All right, so this is intro to Windows. Yeah, unfortunately, Adam cannot be here. We wish him the best. All right, who am I? My name is James Southcott. For all you don't know me, I'm a second-year honors BSMS cybersecurity major. I'm from Rochester, New York. Go Bills. I do Windows for CCDC. Be at the presentation tonight. Go there. Skip it. Just kidding. CCDC is awesome, and if you like this presentation, you should sign up for CCDC Windows.
If you want to learn how to blue team, come to CCDC. We'll teach you a thing or two.
Yeah. And also, we just need people, please. Me and Asa are the only people who do Windows for CCDC right now. I do GRC at a real estate company. I'm on the club volleyball team. That's pretty fun. We get to travel a lot. Played a lot of sports in high school. Follower of Christ. If any of you ever want to talk faith, I'm always an open door. I love Chick-fil-A also. I love Chick-fil-A.
Okay, I'm Asa, 4th year, so about to graduate. I'm originally from Austin, Texas. I've been on the CCDC team for 4 years doing Windows stuff. I've done more blue team comps than I can count, but that says more about how high I can count. I currently work at Security Risk Advisors. I just signed a full-time offer, so I'll be going there after school too, if you end up there. Oh, thank you. But if you end up there, come say hi. And I like some other things like baking, gardening, and gaming. So to understand Windows, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, which the beginning of Microsoft. Many of you know this man, Mr. Bill Gates. Windows 1.0 was in 1985, and we're still dealing with the poor choices made in that particular operating system. Next was MS-DOS. Had a command line interface only. No Windows in your Windows. Text-based commands, many of which still exist in the OS today. Like here's an example, like dir, that's still around. I always hit ls, and then I'm like, what was the command? And I'm like, dir. Please laugh. So you can type commands to manage files, run programs, do computer stuff. And then it had a file system. It had no task scheduler, so you could do one thing at a time and one thing only. If you want to do something else or something needs to happen in the background, no. Do you want to do something?
Sure. Windows 1, they added a GUI, which is pretty cool because that's Windows is the GUI. Some early stuff we know and use today, yada, yada, yada. It was Windows 1. It wasn't really that important. Windows 2, you could have multiple windows open at the same time. They added Office, which was pretty cool. Windows 3, shout out Southwest. Yeah, that's what Southwest looks like if you didn't hear about that during the CrowdStrike incident. Yeah, they had some cool stuff. They had Solitaire. That's probably the most important thing there. Windows NT, new technology. They still use this today.
Does anyone want to guess when Windows new technology came out? 1945.
Something like that.
A little later. 1991. But it's still new technology, if anyone asks.
Yeah, unfortunately. It allegedly added security.
1980
Yeah. But if you ever see all of the Windows stuff is called NT and then whatever after. So the file system is NTFS. Oh, right there. So yeah, they love NT even though it's not new anymore. But this was when that was introduced. It's 32-bit. Now it's 64. 93. Yeah, it's really old. Windows 95. Some cool stuff, I guess. Windows Explorer. Adam made all these slides, so I learned I was doing this last night. They added a cool new UI. It's all right. Taskbar, Internet Explorer. Used that on the desktop when I was 10.
Okay, we're getting into the modern stuff, right, guys? Windows 2000. It's so new. Um, it was actually released in 1999. Don't ask questions. It had some things that, again, we're still dealing with today. That's a theme here. A lot of Windows is shit that happened in the 2000s, and now that's just still how it is. Because if they change anything, people will be mad. So you have to deal with some jank when you're working with Windows. That can be really nice if you're a red teamer and the blue teamers don't fully appreciate the jank. But if you're trying to blue team or you don't know the OS super well, it can be really annoying. So specifically, they added the MMC. So if you've ever looked at, there's no example of it. It's like a really distinctive UI. It has a lot of different things that you can manage through it, but it has like they're called snap-ins. You'll recognize it if you look at a couple of them. They're all really similar, and that's because they all use the same thing under the hood. So some examples would be Event Viewer, the Task Scheduler, Disk Management. I don't remember that snap-in, but I'm sure it exists, and then some AD stuff. Oh, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is what the management console looks like. You have this big thing over here with stuff you can select, and then you have two vertical menus. If you look at Windows GUIs, a lot of them look exactly like this, and that's because they have the same MMC under the hood. And then this is just Task Manager. We all know and love Task Manager. When something isn't working, you hit Control-Shift-Escape, and you go kill in your Task Manager. Yeah.
All right, Active Directory, the first cool thing that Windows actually did. So Active Directory is used by 99% of organizations like that just exist because it is pretty good. Does it have some security issues? Yes, but it is the one stop for organizational, user management, computer management, permission management, just everything you can think of you can do in Active Directory. We don't like rel IDM. Where's Braden? There you go. So yeah, you can create users. So in any type of work environment, you want to be able to control what your users can have access to, what they can do, what they can sign in on, and that is done in Active Directory. You create the user account, so we've all seen. So like, the perfect example, we all have RIT student accounts, right? Those are accounts that sit in Active Directory, and we get permissions assigned based on that, right? So if we are logged into our RIT account, so mine is jms at rit.edu, right? And I try to go to, yeah, whatever. And I try to go to something, like let's say the Azure portal, right? That would be pretty important for management of RIT's like network and systems and all this stuff, right? I get a big access denied screen, right? Because as a student, I shouldn't have access to that. And that's done through permissions and a hierarchical structure, which is pretty awesome. You can have forests, trees, domains. That's super helpful. Like if you're a company and you buy another company, you can just take their domain and slot it right under yours, right? And now it's easy to manage that domain and apply all of your policies to that. In group policy objects. Group policy objects are super awesome. They're a super easy way to enforce just things that you want your users to have access to and be able to do. So the best one, minimum password lengths, right? We all know that passwords are super important, and if you have a weak password, it's probably going to get brute forced. But if you make sure your passwords, like all your users' passwords have to be 15 characters complexity or like even higher, so like you can set it at a specific organizational unit, which is super helpful. So like if you want all of your domain administrators or like anyone in IT to have like a 20-character password, I've seen that before. You can do so much with group policy objects. Even stuff you wouldn't think about, like most work computers, they'll set a wallpaper for you, right? And if you didn't know, wallpapers can actually have malware like embedded in them. So you don't want people to be able to change their wallpaper. So that's like a group policy object you can set. Stuff like BitLocker. BitLocker is super important for just drive encryption. You don't want people to be able to turn off BitLocker or like plug in a USB that doesn't have BitLocker encrypt like turned on. So group policy objects are super awesome. You can apply them at different levels throughout that hierarchical structure. So let's say I just absorbed a new company and I don't want to quite apply all of my group policy objects to all of their users and computers, right? Because as you'll find, stuff breaks when you just start applying stuff willy-nilly, unfortunately. That happens a lot in Windows. So I can like exclude their domain from my group policy object, and I can really specifically apply group policy objects where I want to and apply certain controls where I want to. And they've got so many options for applying them. One of the awesome parts about Windows. Next most important part about AD is users and groups. Everybody here has an RIT user account. That is probably stored in a group in RIT's Active Directory called students, right? And that gives us permissions to certain things we need. Like if you didn't know, you can get a Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365 license with your RIT student account, right? So that permission is assigned with the students group in RIT, and all of our student accounts are assigned to that group as well. Right, so that gives us permissions. This is a really scalable way to do stuff. And if you do the cloud version of it and enter an ID, you can automate the whole thing, which is pretty cool. But in Active Directory, we'll just set it for PowerShell. Yeah, so some example permissions: write access to folders, ability to print to like certain printers in Office. Like that's actually a pretty important one that you wouldn't think about, right? Like you don't want anybody to be able to print to like HR's printer. You only want HR to have access to HR's printer in their little office or something, because they're gonna have a lot of PII in that stuff that they are printing. Yeah. Deploying cloud is significantly easier, and the biggest difference when you're explaining it to a business is the cost. So deploying Windows Server like Active Directory is super expensive up front, right? Because you have to have all of the servers on premises, and you have to go through actually just all of the actual installation and setting it up correctly, which can be difficult if you don't do it right. But the biggest thing is the upfront cost, right? Entra ID in Azure, you pay as you go for everything. So the bigger your business gets, the more you pay, right? But Active Directory, it doesn't really matter how big your business is. You have to buy servers to start, just to like even install Windows Server 2022 or whatever you want to use, right? So that, I forgot, OpEx versus capital. Is that the right term? Capital, maybe, probably. I don't know. Just money, just like the money spent at the beginning. And also Active Directory, like if you want to set up something like MFA, right, or SSO, it's 5 clicks in Enter ID, right? And MFA is on by default. But if you want to set that up in Active Directory, you got to buy a whole nother server, right? You got to set up this thing called Active Directory Federation Services, and now you have to redirect all your SSO requests to the Active Directory Federation server, and that's got to have a public IP. So it's just a lot of overhead and a lot of upfront capital expenditures that you have to spend if you want to set up Active Directory versus Enter ID, which is why if you're setting up something like a company for the first time, set it up with the cloud version. And also you don't have to be like have access to this like literal physical server to manage it. That's also a huge one. Like everybody can work remotely. That's yeah. Oh, and then so you can access it from everywhere, and then do like stuff like conditional access policies, which are super helpful. I'll talk about all of that way more. I'm doing an IAM education presentation in like 2 or 3 weeks, and so like I'm gonna go way into Enter ID and stuff in that. But yeah, that's all that. That was a good question, actually.
Okay. Next, we move to Windows XP, which is the first one that people in this room are probably familiar with. I think I used XP a couple times. It's still, sadly, in use in some situations. Particularly, you will see it in healthcare, manufacturing, stuff where they, yeah, exactly, where they need a box to run a specific program, and that specific program hasn't been updated for 15 years or whatever. Yeah, they're still running XP. And XP is not that good security-wise. They've published some service patches to try to help with the big issues, but just don't run XP, please. I'm begging you. It's not great. They got rid of the MS-DOS kernel, new kernel in Windows XP, but it was still based on Windows NT. Like all the commands are the same. Well, most of the commands are the same. A lot of the tools are the same. Switching from one to the other, there's changes, but they're not. It's not a crazy change. This is where Windows Firewall is at. I actually didn't know that. Windows Firewall, great tool for blue teamers. If you want to just throw up a firewall real quick, only allow scored services, remote access that you need. That will be very useful in blue team comps if anyone was thinking about doing some of those anytime soon. It also added, Windows XP also had Bluetooth support. Oh, sweet. We're talking about Windows Firewall. So a firewall adds protection by filtering your network traffic. You can filter incoming and outgoing network traffic based on security rules. That's usually going to be ports, but you can do other stuff, which lets you restrict down what services you're allowed to have running on a box. Prevent unauthorized access to some random port that Red Team wants to spin up a box on. If Red Team wants to set up their own OpenSSH server on port 1337 or whatever, your firewall, if you have it configured correctly, can block that, assuming you don't have anything you want running on 1337. And you set it up through predefined rules. This is the GUI. To be honest, I would recommend using the command line because this GUI annoys me. I would also highly recommend scripting it. If you're looking for a script to write and you're interested in blue teaming, write a firewall script. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That's later in the presentation. We're talking about that later. Next, Windows 8. Who remembers Windows 8? It basically didn't exist. We went straight from 7 to 10. Wait, did I skip the 7 slide or is it not in here?
I don't know. I didn't make these slides.
Apparently, we're not talking about Windows 7. Windows 7 does not exist. If anyone says Windows 7 exists, they're lying to you. Windows 8 was very weird. They tried to do this whole tile thing. They kept that in Windows 10, but they like really went hard on it in Windows 8. I think it was like a tie-in with the Windows Phone. If anyone remembers that, they had this whole thing where like tiles moving around. It was weird. It didn't work out. Some people liked it. I think they're wrong. So we had a start screen instead of the island, which is this beautiful thing you've all come to know and love, which allows you to just launch apps, check the weather, look at your emails, stuff like that really quickly. No one uses it for that because Microsoft designed it and it's kind of bad. But yeah, you theoretically could do all of those things. Oh yeah, it was designed for touchscreens, like I was saying with the Windows Phone. So they really went hard on, hey, we're going to have this cool mobile OS that's going to integrate with your Windows laptop or whatever. And everyone was like, cool, Microsoft, make it not horrible, and then we'll talk. And they never did. Okay, now Windows 10. This is what most people are probably still using. We might have some Windows 11. But yeah, Windows 10 and Windows 11, basically the same. I won't apologize for saying it. It was announced in 2014, which makes me feel super old. And it brought back the desktop. Oh, I completely forgot Windows 8 completely removed the desktop. Start menu is no longer full screen. It added Windows Sandbox, and it changed IE to Microsoft Edge. And then there was a new settings app. It got rid of the old Windows 7 control panel, but this Windows 7 control panel still exists. Again, we can't get rid of anything or people might be mad, even if it makes it really confusing because there's 5 different places to change the same setting. Oh, also snipping tool. We all love snipping tool. Oh, and then Windows 11, 2011, that cannot be right. That's not right. The start button was moved to the center of the taskbar, and that's pretty much it. Notepad and File Explorer now support tabs. Great Microsoft. No one used Notepad anyways. Notepad++ for the win. File Explorer is kind of nice though. It also added widgets, which is sort of the. I don't really either. I don't know. Neither of us know what widgets are, but they're like little customizable things that can pop up in the start menu. Theoretically, you could do stuff with that. I never have because it was designed by Microsoft and it isn't that great. Windows 12. I hope you're all ready. It's going to come out pretty soon now that they're forcing everyone on Windows 11, and then it's going to be somehow worse than Windows 11, and you're going to be like, can I just go back to 10, please? Okay, let's further analyze Windows. You want to do this?
This is actually like the start of the slides that we actually made. Shout out Adam for everything else. So the file system, NTFS, everybody's used the Windows file system before, hopefully. Each drive is a letter. C is the default drive, but like if you ever plug in a flash drive, you might see D, F, E. Yeah, some important directories, users, that's where your local user sits. Windows/System32, that's where everything else sits. Yeah, that stores executables, DLLs, everything important. Program files and program data, you'll see that a lot. That's where a lot of applications go. Don't ask what goes in program data Fortnite or Epic Games Fortnite. Oh, interesting thing about the file system. So how many of you are in 123 or 127 right now? So that's a lot of you. Have you guys gotten to like data structures, data types yet? No? So eventually you'll get to like node-based structures. And one of those, so like a tree type structure, you can kind of envision it. The entire Windows file system is actually just an n-ary tree. So each like node can have as many child items as it wants. And when you delete something, it actually doesn't delete it. Like it doesn't wipe the contents off the drive. It just unlinks it in the chain. So it still exists, especially, and if your drive's encrypted, like you can like get it back. Like if you take the drive and if you know what you're doing with reversing. But once you delete something, it just gets unlinked from the chain, and it's an interesting way to develop it. But that's why we use BitLocker. Yeah, that's about all for the file system. Huh? A what? Okay. The registry. So we had Intro to Linux last week. They showed you guys the .conf files, I believe. That's where configurations are stored. The registry is where configurations are stored for Windows. It is kind of like its own separate area. There aren't drives. Everything is stored under like that HKLM. That's like high key local machine, high key H key local machine, H key local user, H key classes user, or something like that. There's like 5 of them. Everything is either like a string, a binary, and integer. So that's reg underscore SZ, reg underscore B, reg underscore D word. You guys will learn about that in 202 with the different types of data types that Windows likes. So everything's stored in a hive. So this is an example of a hive right here. They're usually really long, and nobody actually knows them off the brain. So that's why we write all of them down. No, you don't. So this is like an example of a hive. This controls RDP settings, so remote desktop to your computer. So that's pretty important. And then this is an example of the actual keys that are stored in there. So security layer 2. This basically just makes sure everything is encrypted, right? So if you go to your registry and that's not set to 2, it's set to 1, and you like go to remote desktop in your computer, everyone can see everything. So that's not good. Oh, up there, that's that's CCDC documentation.
So most of the time, stuff will set the registry for you. So that will be like the Windows settings app, group policy, stuff like that. But sometimes it is really useful to know the actual reg keys so you can go and check things manually, make sure there's no shenanigans going on, and then make edits if you desire instead of digging through the settings menu. So registry, not as important for I guess day-to-day use, but it is really useful to know your way around it. So if you want to just open it up sometime, look around, try to find something fun, yeah.
If you just type regedit in your search bar, it'll come up, and then you'll be able to see all your registry keys. What's next? Processes. So this is actually something I just finally understood how it works. So you guys have like a .exe file on your computer, right? It's an application. Well, it's just a computer, or it's just a file at that point, right? It's just sitting there. It's not doing anything. Once you click it, right? Like once I click Edge, now it's a process because it's running in memory. Processes can be viewed in a couple of those. Task Manager is the default for Windows, but you should, use Procmon or Proc Explorer through the sysinternal suite. They're pretty goated. Here are some pretty common processes you'll see if you just open Task Manager or if you use the PowerShell command, which we'll show you later. So like MS Edge, Defender, SVC host does literally everything. Yeah, it does everything. Explore, LSAS. This is a pretty important one. So this is a process that is a combination of the local security authority and the security accounts manager. So when you type in your password, it goes to local security authority. Local security authority hashes it and then sends it to SAM. SAM, security accounts manager, stores the hashes of all your passwords. It's the authentication method in Windows. Unfortunately, LSAS leaves all of these password hashes in memory. And you can get them with this cool thing called Mimikatz, which you guys will get to use in the demo. I know he loves Mimikatz. So LSAS, unfortunately, leaves all of your password hashes. And then once you have the hash, if you have enough time and compute power, you can brute force it. But yeah, that's one of the demos. Services. Do you want to go over services?
Sure. So a service is basically a process that runs in the background. So it can start automatically. It can run in the background without you really seeing what it is, unless you go look for it, which makes it really useful for Red Team. If they spin up a malicious service, they don't have to worry about persistence. That's built in. They can load a DLL, and it'll show up under SVC host, which we were just talking about. It'll just show up as SVC host in Task Manager, and you'll be like, "What's this?" And then you'll be like, "Oh, it's just a service," but it's actually Red Team. Some common services that you might see are WinRM, Windows Remote Management. This is like a remote access tool. Red Team loves it, and yeah, don't let Red Team love it. It's bad. They'll do mean stuff to you. MPS SVC is the firewall. And then there's also some services for DHCP, DNS caching, remote desktop, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely before you blue team Windows, go open up services on a clean machine and just look at what's there. If you look at what's there and there's a lot of like really weird random acronyms that don't make any sense.
Term service.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, why do I need this? By looking at a clean system that you know is good, you'll be able to identify, hey, what is this Windows puppy registry or whatever? I don't remember seeing that on my clean system. And then you can Google it, and they'll be like, nothing will come up, and you'll be like, okay, it's Red Team. And that'll help you kick them out of your services. Sysinternals is goated. Basically, the only reason blue teaming Windows is possible. Initially developed by someone, I don't remember who. Some dude. But then was bought by Microsoft. So now they're maintained by Microsoft. Why they don't just make them a default part of the OS, we will never know. They really are incredibly useful. There are tools there's like 50-something tools. So I can't go over all of them, but I will go over the most important ones that we use all the time when blue teaming. Two of the biggest ones are Process Explorer and Process Monitor. Process Explorer is basically Task Manager++. Yeah, you can see all sorts of information that's super useful. Loaded DLLs, who ran a service, or who ran a process rather, the command line that was passed to that process. It's so much better than default Task Manager. And then Process Monitor is basically Windows logging, but actually good. You can configure it. It'll basically just collect a bunch of events the second you start up, and then you can filter your view of those events with filters and look for things you care about. For example, we might be looking for, oh, is someone enabled RDP through the registry or enabled WinRM through the registry. We can go look for registry modifications using Process Monitor, which is very useful. And then TCP view, if you've ever heard of the netstat command or used it, TCP view is a nice GUI way to look at active TCP connections on a box. Very good for finding C2 servers, stuff that shouldn't be there. Just generally things using the internet that you don't want to be. Auto runs, my personal favorite sysinternals tool because it is amazing. It looks at a bunch of super common Windows persistence locations. So it'll look at, there's a registry key that runs anything in it on startup. It'll look there. It'll look at your scheduled task. It'll look at services. And it'll try to find ones that are weird. Well, it'll show you everything, but it'll highlight in red things that are unsigned or weird in some way. And you can look at those, and it's usually red team. It also highlights things in gold which don't exist but have an entry in the auto run registry. So it'll be, or in the auto run location. So you can look at those too. Sometimes there's interesting things there. But it is amazing for kicking out red team, getting rid of persistence that exists on a box. And persistence is just red team's way of maintaining access to your system as you take things out, as you restart the box especially is important. And auto runs helps you find those. List DLLs just shows DLLs loaded by a process. Can be useful for finding DLL injection side loading, which are Windows attacks where you hijack a running process, which may be legitimate, and you inject malicious code into it to be run. So it'll look like a benign process in Task Manager, but it's actually red team running stuff through that shell of a process that they took. And then strings, you'll learn more about this in reversing, but it pulls out ASCII strings from executables and displays them, which can be really useful if you're trying to reverse something. Maybe you run strings on it and it pulls out a domain. Maybe that's the C2 domain. Maybe you should go look at what that domain is. Maybe it pulls out commands. That's also really common because malware can pass things to command interpreters like PowerShell, CMD. So you might see that in the strings. You want to take those?
Sure. So control panel, you can get to pretty much everywhere from control panel. Yeah, control panel has like everything you would need to do from a GUI version. This is one of the great things about Windows. Linux likes to flex that they can do everything through the command line, but we can do everything through the command line and the GUI, which is awesome, right? So like in all of our CCDC documentation, what I try to do is I try to document the GUI way to do it and the PowerShell way to do it, right? Because red team will like to break one of them, right? But they don't like being mean because like they're mean, but not that mean, right? So they'll leave you one way to do it. So you got to know one of them, right? So they'll, what's PowerShell? We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, Windows is awesome. When I was first getting into CSEC, I really didn't know much, so Windows was way nicer to me as an entry level like blue teamer because you have all the GUI stuff, right? When you're just trying to use like the command line and PowerShell, it can be kind of intimidating. And you see someone like on Linux just writing 100 commands a minute, and you're like, how can I keep up with that, right? Windows GUI. So control panel, you can see everything. You can see firewall, even though the firewall GUI is not that good. Network connections, programs, users. You can do, ease of access is like the name of Windows, basically. If there's something you want to try to do in Windows, you can probably do it, even if you have to go through 15 Microsoft Learn pages. PowerShell. So everything we've been showing you so far has been the graphical user interface or GUI version of what we've been showing, but you can also do just about everything in PowerShell. PowerShell is amazing for scripting, automating things, remote management, just anything you would want to do in a business environment or in a red versus blue competition, you can use PowerShell for. For CCDC, we write so many PowerShell scripts. Yeah, I write scripts mid-comp sometimes because some of the other scripts are broken, and now I got to write a new script. PowerShell is awesome. Every single PowerShell has documentation on it. For Linux, you just hit man and then the command. For PowerShell, the better way to do it, in my opinion, is to just Google Microsoft Learn and then the commandlet. That will show you the full documentation on it. And Microsoft Learn is amazing. It is kept very up to date, very detailed, very just amazing. So yeah, PowerShell is pretty awesome. You can do a lot with it. Here's some just helpful stuff that'll help you guys with both the demos and hopefully if you compete in IRSEC or show up to CCDC tryouts. Navigating the file structure. One of the nice things about PowerShell, it's pretty much the same as Linux, CDLS, BWD. Processes and services, this is really awesome to see. Get process, get service, and then if you want to stop them, if you find one that was started by red team. Processes and services. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so another thing about PowerShell, you can also run any, if you know the Windows terminal commands, like for example, you want to use dir instead of ls, you can just run it and it'll work. There's also a ton of aliases for stuff, especially for simple things like moving around. So you'll type ls, I think ls is an alias to
Get child item.
get child item, yes, which is very fun to type. So there's lots of aliases to make it simpler to switch between Linux and PowerShell. Also, I just wanted to comment on the, I guess like the anatomy of a PowerShell commandlet. So you'll see stuff like this a lot, where it has like the verb and then what you're doing. So get service, get process, start service, stuff like that. So as you get more experience with PowerShell, you can usually guess at what the PowerShell commandlet is going to be because it's not abbreviated. It's literally just what you want to do and what you want to do it to. So that's another nice thing about PowerShell.
Yeah, we'll see that even more on the next slide because it's got users and groups. Get history, that one's pretty cool. If, you know, red team is on your box at the same time as you and you just see what they did. PS readline also helps you see PowerShell history. Users and groups, probably the ones I use the most doing Active Directory. Yeah, it's super flexible. And like Asa said, it's in that same format. Get, disable, add, whatever you want to do, just put the verb in front of it and then put what you want to do to it afterwards and hit tab and it'll probably be a commandlet. PowerShell scripting. So this is super helpful. One of the demos today is to write a small PowerShell script to do some stuff. It'll all end in .ps1, so I just wanted to include a little demo on how to do that. Just new tag item, my script.ps1, and then Notepad. Notepad's the default editor in Windows. I like Notepad. Asa likes Notepad++. You can install that too, I guess. Yeah, PowerShell scripts are awesome, right? So if you're doing something, if you guys are competing in IRSEC, right? How many of you are signed up or are going to sign up for IRSEC? Sweet, that is awesome to see. Oh yeah, me too, I guess actually. Like let's say you're in or before competition, right? You are preparing for comp and you find yourself doing something a lot, right? And it's repeatable, right? Write a PowerShell script for it. And then if you want to use it in comp, like put it on GitHub or some public repository where you can pull it from. That's what we use for CCDC, right? All of our scripts are publicly available. Not right now because we haven't privated because we're developing. Yeah. But if you find yourself just doing, even if it's 3 commands over and over and over, just write a PowerShell script to do it. If you're in comp and you find something doing, this is when I did IRSEC last year. It was my first red versus blue competition. I was just playing whack-a-mole with connections, right? I didn't know how to actually get rid of them. I didn't know what I was doing. But like, I write a PowerShell script for that. Write a PowerShell script to look at users and tell you if any users have been added, right? You know, like for IRSEC, you'll get a list of all the default users that should be there. So like write a PowerShell script. Are there any users that shouldn't be there? Is there a user named Drew Young or Liak Varas, right? Like, yeah, get rid of that. So PowerShell scripting is amazing. And if you guys get, just like understand how it works, it'll be so useful for you guys in red versus blue competitions and in work. I use PowerShell scripting at like, not even to actually do stuff, but just to make my life easier. It's really helpful. I think that's the last slide. Yeah, so now do we have any questions about, I guess, just Windows in general? Or blue teaming, or, yes?
is probably, sorry. I think the real answer is probably use the appropriate level of terminal for what you're doing. I always open it as admin because I know what I'm doing, right? I would never break stuff by being in an overprivileged shell. would not happen. So yeah, use caution, but I usually just open it as admin so I don't run into any permission errors.
Because like one thing that's important to note about that is, yeah, we don't have like sudo, right? And like there is like a version, it's like tag run as, and then like, but it's super weird. Just be sure you know what you're doing before you open the terminal, because then if you like didn't open an elevated prompt, now you got to open an elevated prompt, and then now like you can't like just hit the up arrow, right, to get your last command because it's a new session, so you have to rewrite the whole command, and if that's like a heck of a one-liner, like that's kind of annoying. So yeah, I would just try to think about what you're going to be doing beforehand, right? Like if it's the start of a red versus blue comp, probably just open it in admin because you're going to be changing passwords. You're going to be deleting services, deleting processes, deleting users, changing your own passwords again. So like at the start of a red versus blue comp, yeah, just open it in admin. I can't remember the last time I've ever like opened a regular PowerShell session on my host in admin though. So just think about what you're going to be doing it for.
Blue teaming, CCDC, anything.
Be at CCDC info session tonight. Yeah.
So I'm a first year and
Yeah.
I don't know what cybersecurity is.
I-
I still go to CCDC.
Yes, I didn't either. Oh, sorry. So the question, thank you. The question was, I'm a first year and I don't really know anything about cybersecurity. Should I go to the CCDC info session? Yes. And I will tell you a story. I was so intimidated my first year. I cried on my first day, I'll be honest, guys. I was so scared in my first year. I had no idea what I was doing. I showed up to GCIS 127. They started using the command line, and I was like, what the heck is this, right? I had no idea what I was doing. And then I showed up to CCDC info session. I started showing up to tryouts. 140 will teach you so much. CCDC tryouts, we will teach you everything you need to know. If you go and you just try to learn, you will learn so much. If you show up to RITSEC every week, show up to the education presentations teach you so much about just understanding the concepts of cybersecurity stuff. It is very helpful. Yes, 100% show up.
I'm in the same boat. When I showed up my first year, I didn't know what Linux was. I had never used PowerShell. I don't think I didn't know much about Windows. I had like used it a little bit, but through coming to RITSEC and really through CCDC, just talking to people who knew more than me and learning from them, I learned a lot. So come to CCDC. We're here to teach you. If you come to CCDC, we're going to be there to teach you stuff, and yeah, hopefully we will.
And of course, the motto of RITSEC is security through community, right? Never hesitate to reach out to someone if you like just want to learn, right? Like if you just want to learn, like there are so many upperclassmen that I just like started talking to and asking questions like, hey, what does this do? What is this? What is this? Like whether it's like something like cybersecurity based or whether it's just like, where should I go to eat? Like what's the best place on campus, right? Like never hesitate to reach out to someone and ask.
Was there another question?
Yeah, I feel like I saw another hand. Yes. To be honest, I don't. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I've never done this before. So the question was how NTFS doesn't actually delete stuff, right? It just unlinks the node in your file system. So do I know any good ways to actually delete stuff? No, I don't. To be honest, just use BitLocker, which is actually about to be available for all Windows Home versions soon, which is pretty cool. You don't have to buy Windows Pro for $100. Any other questions? All right. I will give the mic back to Leah Kavares because now it is demo time. Do the demos.
Guys, before that, remember you get prizes for education. You should give talks at RITSEC. So, hold on. BitLocker. I'm not Chase K. So you get a lanyard, and after however many presentations, you get a lockpick set. So cool. 5 presentations. And Asa broke his lanyard, so he gets another lanyard. Yay. Okay.
Thank you.